Welcome, everybody. And yes, good evening from sunny Windsor. And indeed, in Shafik's case, I think from South London.
That's right.
Yeah, good evening. Lovely to see you all joining us. Hello to Vera in Belgium and Nicola from sunny Milton Keynes, Peter in Cheshire, Terry in Oxfordshire, Sarah in Macclesfield, Mary in Dublin, welcome. Belinda says, evening from the dark side of the moon. So, oh gosh, Belinda, where are you? That sounds incredible. We want to know. To Martin, who of course is a great Wonderlust contributor in Wiltshire, Bidston, and Sue Hamilton in Winchester, Scott in chilly Toronto. Oh, welcome, Scott. And to Pamela in cloudy Kent. Vivian in Virginia, USA. We've got a real international crowd in tonight. And Paul from the Isle of Man, welcome. Jacqueline says Bolivia is one of her favourite countries, but very cold overnight up in the mountains. Yes, I only ever spent, I think it was 2 or 3 nights in Bolivia, and it was very cold on the Altiplano, yeah. Naomi's in a very cold Toronto. So, yeah, hello to Chris and Ealing. Ashley in Reno, Nevada, welcome. As I say, very international crowd tonight. So Christian in Denmark, welcome. Good to see you here. And to Robert from Cambridge, welcome everybody. I'll be introducing Shafik in a moment. I'm looking forward to this every bit as everybody else is. Hello to Susan from an even chillier Montreal. See, we've had a couple of nice days here in the UK, so we think spring's here, but sadly it's going to be getting very, very cold again this week. Hello to Annie in the Falkland Islands. I think, gosh, Annie, I think you've top-trumped everybody. That's amazing. Welcome. Great to have you here. To Rose in Chichester, and Janet and Michael in Stockport are just back from Ecuador. Hello to Jess from Wanderlust as well here, who's in the chat box. So, yeah, Jess might be any comments tonight or anything you want to say, Jess will be in there. Hello to David from South Wales and Kate from Market Harborough. So, welcome everybody. Really good to have you on board. And yes, so tonight we're going to be hearing all about Bolivia. It's the first event we've done on Bolivia, so I'm absolutely looking forward to this. And I must admit, I feel like I haven't been to Bolivia. I mean, officially I have, but all I did was that Altiplano crossing that one can do from the in the Atacama. So, which was my experience. But I know I do want to go back someday, particularly having read Shafik's book. Hello to Roz from Birmingham, Jade in Edinburgh, Elaine in Yorkshire. Welcome, everybody. So just to warn everybody, we had some tech issues before we came on air at the Wanderlust end. We're all good. But Shafik found that he sometimes disappeared from view. So this is the longest we've had him on screen yet. So if Shafik does disappear, don't worry, his volume, the audio is working perfectly, so you'll be able to hear him even if you don't see him, but just to warn you. And hello to Simon in a very grey South Sea. Yes, I think everywhere in the UK is going to be grey tomorrow, but we did have that little touch of spring, which was exciting. So, just to say a little bit about this evening then. Well, yes, I'm delighted that we've been joined in this exclusive Club Members event by Shafik Meghji. Shafik's an award-winning travel writer and journalist and author based in South London, and he specialises in Latin America and also to South Asia. And he's co-authored more than 40 guidebooks for Rough Guides and DK Eyewitness. Shafik's written for Wanderlust several times in the last year or so. So there was a lovely feature on Easter Island, you might recall, last year. We've got him in the issue coming out next week. He's written about Tierra del Fuego for us and about Sucre in Bolivia. And also, we've just launched the Wonderless Podcast. You'll be hearing more about that next week. But we've launched for 3 episodes, and one of those is on Easter Island, Rapa Nui, and that features Shafik, of course. So it's already there. and on all the usual platforms that you might use for podcasts. If you look up Wanderlust off the page, and the Easter Island episode is there. So very, very exciting. But this evening, of course, he's here to talk about a very different destination, Bolivia. So just to say, Shafik's new book, Crossing the Map, Travels in Crossed Off the Map, Travels in Bolivia, was released, 2 weeks ago, Shafik?
On the 15th.
Yeah. Have you got a copy there to wave?
Of course I do.
So there it is. Yes. Published by Latin America Bureau. So just out. I do recommend it. Seriously. It's very, very good. And it really made me want to visit Bolivia properly and see the whole thing. So I think, Shafik, without further ado, I'm going to leave you and let you get on with it. So,
thanks very much, Lynn, and thanks everyone for joining us. As Lynn said, tonight I'm going to be talking about Bolivia, a country I've been fascinated with since my very first visit as a backpacker back in 2004, and also the subject of my new book, Crossed Off the Map. So the title of my book comes from an apocryphal story from the 19th century about Queen Victoria, who, following a diplomatic spat, ceremoniously crossed Bolivia off of the map. Now, this tale was the product of an overactive imagination, but it sometimes feels as if Bolivia really was crossed off the map, despite being twice the size of France, lying right in the heart of South America, and being bordered with Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and Paraguay. It's often overshadowed by its neighbours. It only ever makes a fleeting appearance in the international media, and the coverage it does get tends to focus on political scandals and environmental disasters. But as I've discovered over the last 2 decades, initially as a backpacker and then as the co-author of the Rough Guide to Bolivia, Bolivia is really a place of dramatic landscapes, diverse cultures, and distinct peoples. It's a country with a fascinating history. It's helped to shape the modern world, and it now stands on the front line of many of the touchstone issues of the 21st century, from the climate emergency to populism. So tonight I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour, taking you from the Andes to the Amazon and beyond, to show you some of my favorite places in Bolivia. So when most people think of Bolivia, you think of the western Andean side of the country. This is a dramatic high altitude region. For much of the time, you're over 3,500 meters above sea level. So it's chilly and can be exhausting to travel through, but it's also packed with interesting places to visit. And the starting point, which you can see on your screen, is the city of La Paz. It's the de facto capital of Bolivia. Most people fly in there. It's obviously got a stunning location. It's overlooked by snow-capped Mount Illimani. It's got loads of historic buildings, attractions like the so-called Witches' Market, which is where indigenous healers, therapists and mystics sell their wares. It's also got some great places to eat and drink. Now, overlooking La Paz, where I actually took this photo, is another fascinating place called El Alto. So it's an altitude of 4,150 meters above sea level, making it the highest city on Earth. It's also one of the fastest growing cities in South America. It's massively expanded over the last few decades to the extent that it's actually bigger than La Paz now. And it's a real center of indigenous Aymara culture. So it's well worth taking a cable car up here. There's fantastic markets to visit, and there's also some wonderful architecture. There's these things known as choles, which are these multicolored buildings used as homes and shops and entertainment spaces. Anyway, just to the west of La Paz and El Alto is, of course, Lake Titicaca, right on the Peruvian border, which looks like a small sea. This place can also get surprisingly choppy. There was a British explorer in the early 20th century, who famously said it was the only place on Earth you could get altitude sickness and seasickness at the same time. So the highlight of this is Isla del Sol, the island of the sun, which for the Inca, they considered it the birthplace of the sun, the moon, and the Inca dynasty. It drew pilgrims for many, many centuries. And today you can follow in their footsteps, following an ancient trail around the island. Now, in the far southwest of Bolivia is somewhere where I'm sure most of you will recognize. It's the Salar de Uyuni, which is the world's biggest salt flat. To put that in context, it's roughly the size of Jamaica. And as you can see, it's a hallucinatory landscape. It's blindingly white, encircled by towering mountains and smoldering volcanoes. It's pancake flat as well, covered by a mosaic of pentagons and hexagons, and it's dotted with rocky islands such as this one, which is populated by giant cacti and vizcachas, which are rabbit-like rodents. So it's a high altitude place. It's 3,663 meters. So it's a place that literally and figuratively leaves you breathless. And just neighboring the Salar is the Eduardo Avaroa Reserve, and you often explore this region on jeep tours, such as the one here. This is a really otherworldly landscape. It's home to red and green mineral-stained lakes, surreal rock formations, and huge colonies of flamingos. Now, this region can feel like a timeless place, but change is coming. It's home to vast reserves of lithium, which is a key component of the rechargeable batteries that we use in our phones and laptops and electric vehicles, as well as to store renewable energy. So my advice is really to visit as soon as you can. So just northwest of the Salar is Potosi, which was the highest city on Earth until the rise of El Alto in recent years. And looming above the city is Cerro Rico, which is that ochre-coloured mountain on the screen in front of you. That was home to the richest silver mines ever discovered. And these riches changed the course of global history. It provided great wealth, but also great suffering, which earned it the nickname the mountain that eats men. So today, if you can cope with confined spaces, you can explore the centuries-old tunnels and meet miners toiling on near-exhausted seams, subsisting on coca leaves, and tributes to a demonic-looking figure known as El Tío, who's the lord of the underworld. Meanwhile, the city of Potosi itself is an architectural treasure trove. It's the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and there's an array of colonial-era churches and an incredibly impressive royal mint as well. Now the riches, the silver from Potosi, also funded the growth of the nearby city of Sucre, which is the constitutional capital of Bolivia, and it's a place that, as Lynn mentioned, that I've written about in the forthcoming issue of Wanderlust. So here's a little sneak preview of that. As you can see, a lot of it is whitewashed, which has earned it the nickname the White City. And its historic centre, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, is absolutely packed with beautiful churches and mansions, municipal buildings. It's one of the best preserved cities in South America, but it's got a really cosmopolitan atmosphere as well. There's a lot of students there. There's people from all over the world. And it's also great for foodies as well. It's famous for its chocolate. It's also famous for salteñas, which are a bit like empanadas. But perhaps its most interesting and unusual attraction is in an unprepossessing location on the outskirts. It's actually a cement works. So you may be wondering why I'm showing you a picture of what looks like a cliff here. But you may be able to see some patterns on the cliff, and those are dinosaur footprints. There's around 12,000 individual tracks from around 15 different types of dinosaurs, and it dates back from the late Cretaceous period. And this is the largest collection of dinosaur tracks in the world. You can get really up close to them within a few meters, not to touch them, but it's an absolutely spectacular thing to see. So from the Andes, I want to whisk you all the way to northern Bolivia, to a very different landscape. Now, most people think of Bolivia as an Andean country, but actually a third of it lies within the Amazon basin. And the west of the Bolivian Amazon, which is only a 30-minute flight from La Paz, has some of the easiest accessible primary rainforest in South America. It's also home to this place, which is Park National Madidi, which is the most biodiverse place on Earth. It's roughly the size of Wales and has around 11,400 species. This includes at least 1,028 species of birds, which is around 10% of the world's total. You can explore on boat trips, you can explore on rainforest hikes, and spot things like jaguars and anacondas, spectacled bears, macaws. And now one of my most enjoyable experiences, most memorable experiences I ever had traveling has been swimming with pink river dolphins in Madidi National Park, which is a absolutely magical experience. Now, the other side of the eastern side of the Bolivian Amazon is far less visited. Now, this area, or part of this area, is known as the Janos De Mocsos, and it has huge rolling grasslands as well as waterways and jungles. This is cattle country now, from an economic point of view, but it's also home to a remarkable set of ancient sites. It has around 20,000 man-made earthworks, hills, canals, causeways, reservoirs, fields. It was built by a complex society and dates back 1,000 years or more. So the photo in front of you, although it just looks like any other waterway, this is actually a man-made canal that was built by the Mocsos culture. Now, many of these earthworks have since been swallowed up by the jungle, but if you visit from the city of Trinidad, you can take boat or jeep trips to visit these ancient sites. Now, a few years ago, while I was doing the research for my book, I visited one of these sites which had been cleared, and a family, an indigenous family, now live there. And when we were looking around the site, there was thousands and thousands of pieces of ancient pottery, and we also found a couple of near intact ceramic pots, and one of them contained the skeleton of a child that died perhaps 1,000 years ago. So these funerary urns crop up quite a lot, but it was an unexpected and really quite powerful experience. Now, in eastern Bolivia, which again doesn't receive as many visitors as the Andean side of Bolivia, it's a very different environment. It's the eastern lowlands stretch out towards the Bolivian border. Again, cattle ranching is here. There's lots of agriculture, oil and gas. You also find Bolivia's section of the Pantanal, which some of you may have visited in Brazil. This is the world's largest tropical wetlands. You also find the modern city of Santa Cruz, which is the country's economic powerhouse. And eastern Bolivia is also home to the Chiquitos region, which has some of the churches that you see in front of you. So this region, which is scrub, tropical dry forest, is dotted with these Jesuit missions that date back to the 17th century and early 18th century. 6 of them survive intact, and they're collectively a UNESCO World Heritage Site, including this one. And they're incredible things to see, particularly because they're absolutely surrounded by the very small towns or the wilderness. They're the biggest things for miles around. And alongside the physical reminders of the Jesuit presence in eastern Bolivia, you also find a musical heritage that lives on today. So there's a style of music known as Bolivian Baroque that features organs and violins, cellos, harps, and other musical instruments. And if you visit the old Jesuit mission towns, you can still hear the music being performed, and it's a beautiful, haunting experience. Now, just south of the Chiquitos regions is one of my favorite places in South America. It's somewhere that I often fantasize about running away to. It's the bucolic town of Samaipata, which is in a valley surrounded by citrus groves and fields of tobacco. It's long been a retreat for travelers and weekending Bolivians. And just outside Samaipata is this place, which is El Fuerte, the fort. So this was a military come residential come ceremonial complex that was originally built around 300 CE, and then it was later a key Inca base before the arrival of the conquistadors. And today it's another of Bolivia's UNESCO World Heritage sites. And Samaipata is also the jumping off point for the Che Trail, which is named after the Argentine revolutionary and retraces his final steps. So Che Guevara arrived in Bolivia in 1966 with grand plans of launching a continent-wide revolution, but it ended in disaster about a year later in the remote hamlet of La Higuera, which is where this photo was taken. Che was captured and killed there, and that turned him into an icon. And now, all along this route, there are scores of monuments, statues, and murals dedicated to it. Now, even if you have no interest in Che Guevara at all, it's still worth doing this doing this route because it's absolutely stunning scenery. It traces a route over the hills of the Cordillera Occidental. So you'll have scree-covered slopes, churning rivers, really isolated, cut-off villages. You have vultures and condors circling overhead. And very few people travel this route. So you really feel as if you have it to yourself. It's a magical place. Now, I could waffle on about Bolivia all night, but I think I'd better stop it there. Hopefully, I've piqued your interest in this remarkable country. And if I have, there's plenty more about it, its landscapes, its history, cultures, and current challenges in my book, Crossed Off the Map. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to hearing your questions. Hi, Lynn. I think Lynn's coming back now, hopefully.
Sorry about that. It was me who had the techie issue that time. My buttons were not working.
There's gremlins in the system.
There really are. And well, we did have a power cut here earlier, and so I don't know if it's anything to do with that. But anyway, back now. So, and I see the questions are coming in as well. First of all, though, what was the name of the place that you say you dream of running away to?
Samaipata. It's an absolutely idyllic town. It's kind of a valley. It's around, I think it's about 1,500 meters above sea level. So it's not too hot. It's not too cold. It's got like a spring-like climate. It's incredibly welcoming, and the population circa 5,000, but I think there's 30 or more nationalities there. It draws an awful lot of people in. So yeah, it's an absolute. It's a tranquil idyll. In fact, in some ways, I regret talking about it because I don't want too many people, I
think really sad, like me, sort of making a note, like, ooh.
Yeah. As long as the group just keeps it amongst themselves today, it could just be our
little secret. Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at some of these questions because I know there a lot have been coming in. So when is the best time to travel?
Right. I mean, like lots of the southern part of South America, the seasons are essentially the reverse of ours. Probably the best time to visit the country as a whole is the winter, which is roughly May to October. Primarily because winter's the dry season, so obviously the temperatures are lower, but it's dry and it's easier to travel around, particularly at lower elevations as well. In the wet summer season, it's very difficult to get into places like the Bolivian Amazon, parts of the eastern lowlands. You can have floods, even in some of the cities. So Santa Cruz, the biggest city, the last time I visited there was in the rainy season, and I ended up, my bus couldn't make it. We had a dramatic storm. The streets flooded, and I kind of waded literally knee deep through for about half an hour to try and get to my hotel. So generally the winter, roughly May to October, is the best time to visit. If you do visit the Salar de Uyuni on your screen now in front of you during the winter, you do get this kind of spectacular scene, however, which is the salt flat floods a bit and turns into a giant mirror. So that can be very dramatic, and you can visit the Altiplano year round. But winter is my tip.
Okay, great. You've disappeared from our screen, but then I think we were half expecting that. It was brilliant that you've stayed to this point.
I can assure you I'm still here at least.
Good. Right. And somebody's asked about the language.
Right. Yeah. Well, Spanish is one of the many official languages there, but Bolivia has a very strong indigenous culture. So the Aymara language and the Quechua language, particularly in the Altiplano regions, are very widely spoken. Now, in terms of English, in the touristy places like Sucre, Ruinabaque, which is the gateway to the Bolivian Amazon, for example, around Lake Titicaca, English is widely spoken. But it's definitely having Spanish, even a few words of Spanish, will go a long way. The good thing is that Bolivian Spanish is very clear, and it's quite slow, or it's certainly not slow, but it's not rapid. It's not too fast like Chilean Spanish or Argentine Spanish. So it's very easy to understand, even if you're not a fluent speaker. But if you don't speak anything at all, just English, you'll be okay. You'll find your way around.
You'll still manage. Great. And right, Belle asked, how safe is it to travel around as a solo female?
Yeah, it's interestingly, I was talking about the safety aspects quite recently. It's generally speaking, if you take all the precautions that you would do if you were traveling in the UK, in Europe, in North America, you'll be okay. Generally speaking, female travel writers and friends who traveled in Bolivia say they come across less machismo in Bolivia than in some other parts of Latin America, such as Argentina or Brazil, for example, particularly in the kind of the Andean side of it. When they have reported that when you often get a bit more, can come across some issues, I understand, around festival time. So around Semana Santa, which is the Easter festival, sometimes because more drink is being taken, I guess at least in part, there can be some issues. Generally speaking, it's a safe country to travel through for most people, and female travelers typically report that they have fewer issues here than in some of the neighboring countries.
Yeah, I think festivals, that tends to go for anywhere in the world, doesn't it? Or big events, just where people emotions are higher. I mean, look at the Oscars, things get a bit crazy.
The other big event, of course, is Carnival, which is also, again, is a fascinating thing to see, and I certainly don't want to put you off visiting, but that might be something where female travelers in particular will face kind of a bit more hassle and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so maybe, so if you do travel during those times, maybe hook up with other people. Okay, terrific. And actually, I mean, I'd hate to bring up anything negative, but there have sometimes been in the press talk about roadblocks and so on, not just Bolivia, of course, but in other South American countries as well. But that does get some coverage sometimes. Do travellers get affected at all by that?
Yeah, it's a good point to bring up, actually, because Bolivia is an incredibly politically engaged country, and if you travel there for any period of time, you'll see protests, often in the main plaza. And one of the forms of protest, a long-standing form of protest, are roadblocks, which can happen for a variety of reasons. These kind of things, if you're traveling around there for a long time, there's a fair chance that your travel plans will be slightly disrupted by there being a roadblock. By and large, beyond that, it's not going to affect your travels too much. But it's the kind of thing that build some flexibility into your itinerary, give yourself some extra time if you've got flights and that kind of thing. I almost missed a flight in La Paz many years back because there was a protest about something, and the streets up to the airport have been blocked off. So you will definitely see these kind of things, but it's nothing to be worried about. And tourists are not targeted or anything like that in it, but it can cause delays and travel disruption.
Sure, travel disruption. Okay, great, thank you. And Christian asks, where will you recommend hiking?
Well, Bolivia doesn't have the reputation of neighboring Peru for hiking, but that's really a misnomer. It has absolutely wonderful trails, particularly in the Amazon. Particularly in the Andean region. So for a short trail, there's a route following the ancient pilgrimage route around Isla del Sol, the island in Lake Titicaca. But there's numbers and numbers of Inca Trails. So they're often called Inca Trails, even though they often date back to previous civilizations. But they take you through absolutely stunning scenery. So if you want to do that, places like Coroico, Sorata, both of which are very accessible from La Paz, has some absolutely wonderful hiking routes, and they range in length from like a half-day hike, all the way up to 5, 6, 7 day hikes. You can also do some 1-day hikes in the Amazon region as well, which it's pretty hard going underfoot. There's lots of mosquitoes, which I can personally testify for, but they're fascinating routes, and they really get you into the heart of the region. So there, and also my favorite place that none of the rest of us are going to mention to anyone outside it, Samaipata, has lots of hiking trails near there too. So you've got countless options really.
Okay, great. And Anne asks, do you know how Bolivia's recovered from COVID?
Yeah, so Bolivia was, like lots of parts of South America, was quite badly hit by COVID, and also just before in late 2019 there was a disputed election, so there was a bit of political turmoil as well, which obviously didn't help with the pandemic response. It actually had also one of the toughest lockdowns, certainly in the region, if not in the world. I was talking to a journalist friend of mine in La Paz who was saying the streets were very, very eerie at the height of it because just no one was out there. It is recovering. The pace of the recovery is not is not comparable to somewhere like Europe, unfortunately. And a lot of people have been badly hit. But the vaccination numbers, fortunately, are ticking up. So hopefully that will be continuing as well.
Okay, good. Do you know how easy it is to cross the land border from Argentina to Bolivia?
Yeah. So that's the La Quiaca border. Well, that's the main one. Yeah, it's very easy. It's very easy to do it, and actually, it's a nice way to cross in if you're coming from Argentina, because separate to Bolivia, that's the northwestern part of Bolivia of Argentina is a fascinating place to travel through. And once you cross over the border, you can actually get a train up past the Salado Uyuni salt flats all the way up to the city of Oruro, from which it's easy to get to La Paz. So the border crossing's easy. You've got a train as well as buses and that kind of stuff. So yeah, very easy to do, and particularly if you want to go to the salt flats, They're virtually on your doorstep. The other way is it very easy to cross in that part of the world is through Chile from San Pedro de Atacama. You can travel through the Atacama Desert into the Salar de Uyuni, which is also a memorable way to enter the country.
Absolutely, which is the way I did it when I just did my little excursion, really, which wasn't long enough. Right, Maureen asks, when she visited in 1998, she could go into the Cerro Rico mine. Is this still possible?
It is still possible. Yeah, it is still possible. It's so that's these are the centuries old, 400-year-old in some cases, silver mines, and that wind their way through the mountain that looks over Potosi. Yeah, you can. I mean, it's an incredible. It's an intense, claustrophobic, but memorable experience. So yeah, absolutely, and it gives you an insight into a way of life that it's hard to imagine still survives today, because the miners still work there. Most of the silver's gone, but they still work on tin and other seams. And it's a lot of it isn't particularly sophisticated. It's a lot of hard work, and they survive on coca leaves, which kind of staves off hunger and staves off the altitude. And there's lots of religious rituals kind of associated with it. So it's an absolutely fascinating thing to do. You certainly can do it. But be aware that if you're even vaguely claustrophobic, it's not for you. It's also at altitude, so you're hundreds of meters underground, but you're also, well over 4,000 meters above sea level. So if you do it, make sure you're fully acclimatized before setting off. But
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that combination would be could be quite unsettling.
Yeah, it's an experience you don't forget in a hurry. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. Naomi asks, what type of budget is needed to visit outside of La Paz?
So it's a cost. Bolivia is a cost-effective place to travel around, and if you're on a tight budget, if you're backpacking, it's a lot cheaper than Argentina or Chile or Brazil, and it's also cheaper than Peru to particularly transport and accommodation, food, that kind of thing. So prices rise a little bit in the high season, kind of in places like the Salar de Uyuni and so on. But no, it's very easy to travel on a budget.
Okay, great. And Kate asks, how easy is it to travel around Bolivia independently? The best way to get around?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, almost all of my travel has been done independently. It's very easy to get around. There's buses everywhere, the public buses everywhere. There's some really great trains. Public buses are not necessarily the most comfortable. The condition of some of Bolivia's roads is not the best, but you can certainly get around everywhere without an organized tour. The only places that you do need to take a tour is the Salar de Uyuni. Just crossing the salt flat is dangerous to do on your own, and in the Amazon as well. If you want to visit the national parks like Madidi, if you want to visit the Janos De Mocsos, it's worth taking an organized tour. Those are easy to organize there as well as over here too.
Yeah, sure. And with several wildlife questions, and I know, that's one of my passions as well. So when and where is best to give you a chance of sightings of good wildlife? Well,
I mean, it somewhere that's got a fair shout with being one of the best places to see wildlife in the world is Park National Madidi, which is in the Amazon region. It's given that it's in the Amazon, it's actually relatively accessible. It's a 30-minute flight from La Paz, an absolutely spectacular flight. I've never been on a flight that's transported you so quickly from such different environments. It takes you from the high Andes into the sweltering rainforest in 30 minutes. So that's an absolutely wonderful place to spot wildlife. You know, you'll lose count of the number of species you see. As I say, pink river dolphins, anacondas, caiman, jaguars. You need some luck, and the bird life is incredible. Anyone that's a birder, it's well worth checking out. Stark contrast, but you know the Salar de Uyuni region is also good for bird life. Condors particularly, and flamingos. You know, there's these mineral stained lakes around there have huge flamingo colonies. I think there's 3 species of flamingos that you find there. So so there's lots of options, and also in eastern Bolivia, there's a couple of actual relatively new places I want to visit that are kind of based around jaguar conservation as well. So there's lots of options.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. And good to know there's new places getting involved in jaguar conservation as well. Okay, and a couple of people have asked about the Shea Trail.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? So, for instance, Sarah's asked, what are the key features of it?
Yeah. So essentially, it runs from the town of Samaipata, and it goes to a really remote hamlet in the called La Higuera, which is where Che was captured along with some of his guerrillas, interrogated, and then killed. So you can stay. This is the end of the route, but the start of it in chronological terms. But it's an incredibly remote place. There's some incredibly atmospheric places to stay. You can stay in places where the guerrillas, where the CIA agents, where the Bolivian army stayed. You can visit the quebrada, the gorge where Che was captured, and you can visit a place called the Escuelita, the small school where Che was interrogated and indeed killed, and that is now a small museum, and there's lots and lots of tributes and murals and statues to him. You then go head back along the Cordillera to the town of Valle Grande, which has the church, which has the hospital where Che's body was taken to, and it was photographed, and these photographs went around the world because he had like a Christ-like look. I mean, I'm sure many people would have seen those photos, and that there's also museums there. You can find out about that element. His body was also dumped by the Bolivian army just outside in a unmarked grave just outside the town, and it wasn't found. I think it was only found in 1997 because I think they didn't want it to become a pilgrimage destination. Ironically enough, anyway, the body was then discovered, flown back to Cuba, but there is now to mark the 50th anniversary of Che's death, there's a huge cultural centre that has been built in this area that kind of has a museum, has tributes to him, that tells you about his life, that has some wonderful photos. There's some fantastic photos of the passport that he used to enter Bolivia, and he's unrecognisable. He's shaved his head. It's kind of, his characteristic beret is gone. He's in a suit. He looks like a provincial bank manager, for example. Anyway, that's just one of the things that you can see here. So if anyone's interested, even vaguely interested in his life, there's lots and lots of sites that you can visit, and it's a spectacular route in its own right.
No, it sounds fascinating, and of course, so many people only really associated with Cuba, and forget about his travels through South America, and in particular with Bolivia. So, no, I think a lot of us will be interested in that. Now, my pronunciation's terrible, so I don't know how to pronounce anything, including Rome, where I live. But Ali's asked about Tiwanaku.
Tiwanaku.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it still possible to visit?
It is. It's somewhere. Actually, I probably should have mentioned in the talk. It's a fascinating place. A bit of background: the Tiwanaku Empire predates the Inca and it was centered on a ceremonial city very close to Lake Titicaca, the ruins of which you can visit today. And it was very influential. It spread its influence across Peru and northern Chile and Argentina as well. And it was very influential on the Inca, who adopted many of their religious practices and so on. Yeah, so you very much can visit. It's easy to do on a day trip from either from La Paz or from Copacabana, which is the Bolivian town facing Lake Titicaca. You need a little bit of imagination to bring it to life. It doesn't, don't go there expecting Machu Picchu, for example, but it's still an absolutely fascinating place to visit, and particularly if you get a good guide. It's definitely somewhere that's worth visiting with a good guide, because there's lots and lots of history to go with it.
Talk about guides. I mean, I know you talked about traveling independently, but are there any particular, because we've got no tour companies involved in tonight, are there any particular tour companies like that you would recommend? I mean, I know I always associate, for instance, Geodesy with Bolivia.
Yeah,
I know they do some tailor-made, but just wondering, you don't have to, but are there any that stick out to you?
I mean, there's of the UK-based ones, Journey Latin America. They know Bolivia really well. I haven't gone on a trip to Bolivia with them, but I've been on trips with them elsewhere in Latin America, and they do good, interesting tours. And there's also lots of Bolivia-based tour groups as well, which in my other book, in the Rough Guide to Bolivia, we have quite a lot detailed. But so and as I was kind of saying before, even if you are traveling independently, there are a lot of the places, particularly the more extreme environments, or places like Tiwanaku, where you really benefit from some local insight. You get a much richer experience. There's some very good regional ones, including actually in the Chiquitos region. So if anyone's interested in visiting the churches in the city of Santa Cruz, there's several, including a Dutch run or a Bolivian Dutch run company, I think called Ruta Verde, that does really good Jesuit themed trip.
Okay, that would be just another. I mean, this is it. There's just so much history, isn't there? It's so many things, so many themes you could follow. Pamela asks, is the witches market still in La Paz?
Yeah, it is. It's it's one of the most touristy thing. Not touristy. It's one of the things most popular with tourists to visit in La Paz, and it's really easy because it's in the center of the kind of the traveler heartland of La Paz, and it's an absolutely fascinating place to visit. It's again, talking about guides. If you're interested in this aspect of Bolivian culture, it's well worth seeking out a guide, because although these people these women are called witches, actually they're kind of it's often that's used. It was used as a pejorative term by the Spanish to these women who are traditional healers and medicine women and mystics and so on. But yeah, the so-called witches market has these incredible stalls packed with all manner of items of it's an absolutely fascinating place to wander around and possibly even pick up a few souvenirs.
Oh God. One day. And Mary asks what currency is used, and also anything about visas, like how easy is it to get a visa?
Yeah, so currency Bolivianos. In the touristy areas, dollars are quite widely accepted, and it's easy to change money or just take out money using a credit or debit card while you're there. Visas, generally speaking, unless you're American, most European nationals from most European countries can visit visa-free. I think it's for 90 days. If you're American, you do have to, even though they don't strictly say you need to get one, beforehand that you can get it on arrival, I would advise getting one in advance from your local consulate, which is hassle-free, basically. But if you're from Europe and lots of other countries, most other countries, as a tourist, you can visit visa-free.
Okay, great. I see a couple of other people have travelled with Journey Latin America and really recommend them, which I've travelled a lot with Journey Latin America myself. They are indeed very, very good. We're getting there really out of time, and I think most of the questions are answered. So this is always difficult, but if somebody was going to go, they've got whatever they've got, maybe 10 days, whatever. So thinking about itinerary wise, what to you would be the absolute must-sees, must-dos?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, if I had to pick out two places, I would say the Salar de Uyuni, and I would say Park National Madidi in the Amazon. These are not unusual or out there choices, but they're just, some of the most incredible landscapes and places to visit, not just in South America, but in the world. And in 10 days, you can definitely visit the two of them. Classically, it's about a 4-day tour around the Salar de Uyuni, and then the Bolivian Amazon is a bit more accessible than you might think. One thing to bear in mind, though, if you are on a short trip, and particularly if you're flying into La Paz rather than into Santa Cruz, which is at sea level, is the altitude. The Andean side of it is a high altitude place, and it does take it out of you, and you will need a couple of days to adapt. So try, give yourself a couple of days just taking it easy. There's a local saying in La Paz. It's eat little, drink little, and sleep alone to help you acclimatize, and that's good. That's a good policy.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I've got 3 weeks. So what do I need on as the absolute must-do-sees?
Well, with the aforementioned Salar de Uyuni and the Amazon, La Paz is definitely worth spending some time in, and Lake Titicaca too. Definitely fitting a visit to El Alto. You can do this in half a day from La Paz. There's some wonderful walking tours. Another company to look out for is La Paz on Foot, which does great hikes, as the name suggests, both urban hikes in El Alto, but also someone asked about trekking routes. They also do great guided treks throughout Andean Bolivia. So I would do those, and then I would spend some time in the Bolivian Amazon. Sucre is a great city to visit, and you can easily pair that with Potosi. And then finally, if you can have a day or two in Samaipata just to chill out at the end of the trip, that's a great bet. Often to save time, if you fly into Santa Cruz and out of La Paz, or vice versa, it's quite a good way of packing, of making the most of your itinerary and not retracing your steps. So, particularly if you're on a short itinerary but want to pack a lot in, that's one of the ways of doing it.
Okay, great tip there. Thank you so much for that. So let's just very quickly with your book again. Now, this book, we should stress, this isn't a guidebook. I mean, it gives brilliant ideas. Yeah, crossed off the map, and your travels in Bolivia. Now, so just to say to people, this isn't a guidebook, and as you say, you're author of Rough Guide to Bolivia, so they can get lots of really good information in there. But I do say to people, do buy Crossed Off the Map as well, because for me, certainly, it got me so excited about going to Bolivia, and I learned so much reading it. And I found I was building up a little wish list of places to go and see. So just really quickly, what gave you the idea to do it?
I mean, really, it dates, the initial inspiration dates back to my very first visit as a backpacker in 2004, before I was a travel writer. I didn't know much about Bolivia at that point, but as I visited, I got fascinated with the place, and I came back to the UK, and I was trying to find an English language book that would kind of give me a bit more insight, and one didn't really exist. And then a few years later, I got the chance to return to co-author the Rough Guide to Bolivia, and I thought, oh well, this gives me the chance to actually, do the research and do some more travels and to write the book that I would have liked to have read way back when I first visited. So it's a narrative travel book, and it explores the landscapes and peoples and cultures of Bolivia, but it also explores its history. Beyond its borders, people don't know much about Bolivian history, but believe it or not, it's a place that helped to shape the modern world. And it's also a place that says a lot about the world that we're in today. It is on the front line of many of the most pressing issues that face all of us everywhere in the world, from the climate emergency to populism to migration to the war on drugs. So I try and cover all of those things in the book. And there's also some fun things about witches' markets and swim with pink dolphins and that kind of thing as well.
No, absolutely. I think you've summed it up so well there. And it's a great read and full of surprises, things I didn't know about Bolivia. And I couldn't understand why they weren't better known. But as you say as well, also those parallels with modern day life in the world as well. So I think you've just done such a great job with that, Shafik. So thank you so much. So I'm hoping Shafik's going to pop back up because it's so sad to say goodbye without him on the screen. But I'm
trying my best, but it's not. The technology is not helping me out here.
Never mind. Well, you're getting lots of love in the chat box. People have really enjoyed that this evening. We'll be sending out a follow-up email in the next few days, which will have a link to the recording for anybody who wants to catch a bit. I saw early on a few people were having connection issues. Very quickly, Rose asks, is your book available as an ebook?
It is indeed, yeah. There's, I think the link that was shared should have it. If you can't find it, if you go to my Twitter or my website or my Instagram, there's links to everywhere you can buy it.
Yeah, terrific. So we'll send out a follow-up email within the next week, and that will have a link again to the book, and we'll probably just put in a few of the questions and answers in there as well. And the issue on sale next week of Wanderlust. Well, of course, you're all members anyway, so you'll be getting that. And that, as I say, we've got not just one article by Shafik, we've got two there somehow. So Tierra del Fuego, but also about Sucre in Bolivia, which is great. And do, of course, listen to the Wonderless Podcast on Rapa Nui. Well, Shafik, thank you so much again. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, Lynn. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for everyone for tuning in.
Okay. Evening all. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.